What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Adventure Outpost. I know it's been a minute. I was going through a whole lot of shit between moving, going to visit my brother for his graduation ceremony, and work with 4th of July. It's been so much craziness, I haven't had time to get a video out. So I'm doing them now. We're a few days late, but I don't think anybody cares. You're barely even paying attention anyway. So today is the day where we are going to rank up all of our movies for the month of June. I know it's a few days late, but if you don't give a fuck, I don't give a fuck. We're doing it now, and that's as good as we're gonna get it. So, before we dive into that video, as always, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and smash that like button so we can rock that algorithm. And now we can party right in on ranking all of the terrible, no good, dirty, rotten, terrible, awesome, great, to the fucking immaculate movies that have come out for the month of June. Kicking us off at the bottom of the list for the worst movie to come out for the month of June is The Man from Toronto, the movie directed by Patrick Hughes, I believe, who also did The Hitman's Bodyguard and The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. So you can pretty much see where we're going with this movie. It's another action comedy starring Kevin Hart, Woody Harrelson this time around. I think the two of them together playing off of each other is probably what works the best about this movie. Woody Harrelson exudes so much charm as always, and Kevin Hart doing his Kevin Hart thing is always a blast to watch in certain scenes. I think where this movie falters the most is strictly in its story and its direction. I don't know if Patrick Hughes just went in and was the guy who pitches everything as, I can do it for really cheap and it's going to have terrible CGI, but who cares because we'll make some return on investment. But it was really noticeable in The Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard with some terrible CGI, and this movie takes it into absolute overload with just atrocious CGI at all times. There's a plane sequence that looks really bad at times. As cool as the one-shot fight scene is at the end, it's so chaotic and just mashed together that there's just so much terrible CGI in it that it just kills me. This movie is just chock full of moments that just breach that uncanny valley and just like destroy the movie for me. I was enjoying this movie up until like the last 20 minutes of the movie, where it just went balls to the walls with its stupid CGI and like really terrible visual effects, that it just completely ruined the movie for me. And it went from being a movie that I was ready to give like 3 stars to drop down to 2. Putting it here in last place. It's a shame because the first half of this movie is front loaded with a decent enough plot, some funny gags, some really good humor between Woody Harrelson and Kevin Hart. So it's a shame that the movie ended up just nose diving off of a cliff in the second half. Up next is the epic conclusion to the Jurassic franchise. It is Jurassic World Dominion. A movie that, better than Fallen Kingdom, it's a movie that had plenty of positives to it, but it also had a shit ton of negatives to it. It's a movie that is entirely too long. It is a movie that is pretty brutal in the first half to get to. It's a movie that's very second half loaded. Like once they get to the Biosyn, I think that's when you know it. When you can't remember the names of shit, you know that we've got a problem here. And I only saw the movie like 2 weeks ago. I think it was Biosyn though. That whole second half where they're at that compound, that's where the movie really gets its meat and potatoes, and it really like takes off and becomes like the enjoyable movie of that I was hoping for. All the pros are basically from that chunk. But the first half of the movie is where all the negatives come in. I think its first act is fucking atrocious and it needs so much work. The Malta scene is one of the dumbest scenes I've ever seen in film. It's absolutely terrible. You want me to believe that Bryce Dallas Howard can outrun a velociraptor? Like, yeah, sure, okay. Or whatever the hell the raptors were called that were fighting them, the laser-guided raptors. It was just fucking stupid. They do just so many dumb things where it's like the characters have plot armor, so it's like we obviously can't kill them. So like when he slows down on the bike, the raptor will slow down, and then it's like a cartoon where like they just skid from missing each other, and it's like, no, it's fucking stupid. It's tough. The first half of this movie is tough to get through. But the second half definitely has some really good pros to it. I like the way everybody plays off of each other, especially once they all start to come together. I think their work with giving the legacy characters their own story to function within and not just having them be in service of the new characters, I think was a very good choice and was probably one of the best things that this movie did for itself. But definitely a better second half, better than Fallen Kingdom, but still fallen on impact for just what a way to go out. I definitely hope that they take some time before they make another one, because you know they're going to make another one at some point. But take some time, go back to the woodwork, and let's rework this franchise and see if we can't get back to the highs of Jurassic Park and the first Jurassic World movie. Up next is the Netflix movie Interceptor, with Elsa Pataki, I think her last name is. Correct me if I got that wrong. I'm sorry if I did. I believe that is her name, though. She's the wife of Chris Hemsworth. She's a decent action star in her own right. She was in a few of the Fast and the Furious movies, but she takes center stage in this movie as a government agent that is working at a secret government facility where they are the last bastion of hope to stop nuclear missiles from hitting the US. And of course, the base gets attacked by some terrorists that are looking to render the interceptor that she's on inert so that the nukes can get through to America. It's a very simple plot, but it leaves enough. It's a simple thread to just get the action going. And I think this movie has some decent action. While the story is pretty silly, it does harken back to some of those old 90s action movies where it's like a very silly plot, but it's mostly just a plot to get emotions so that we can watch some really cool kick-ass set pieces at times. And I think this movie has some decent moments where it really knocks it out of the park with some really cool set pieces. I like her as a kick-ass action heroine too. I think she did a really good job in this movie. I think there's a lot of pros to go with this movie. I think the fact that it's short runtime, it gets in, it gets out, it doesn't waste any time is definitely good. It's a simple plot. We're keeping stuff simple. We're not trying to go too crazy here. It's just woman must protect against terrorists. Boom. Let's rock and roll. Let's do it. And I think the action scenes are pretty solid. I think the best thing that I can say about this movie is a movie that so many other movies with female-led protagonists and action movies need to take note of, and that is how to endear us to your character. Too many movies where you see female-led action heroines that are just, I am strong because I am female. Not so great. We need somebody that is going to claw tooth and nail to get what they need. If you're not bleeding for your goal, you are not a worthy character. That goes male or female, doesn't matter who. And the best thing we can say about this movie is that this character goes through the fucking ringer to achieve her goal. She gets the shit kicked out of her the entire movie, but just never stops. It just endears you to the character. It's what makes that this movie went above and beyond for me, simply for that fact that they took the care to just have this character just get the shit kicked out of her the entire time, but she never stops. She's just gonna keep going until she achieves her goal. Like, that is a fucking good sign of a character right there. Like, look at all the greats, like fucking John McClane just gets his ass kicked the entire movie. Ellen Ripley just constantly up against the wall, getting fucking duked out the entire thing. Charlize Theron's character in Atomic Blonde just gets the absolute shit kicked out of her, but just never stops. It's great. Indiana Jones, like, all the best action characters. What makes them so good is just their grit and determination. So this movie hit well for me simply because it respected that fact and went through such good detail to keep that a nice thread throughout this movie. So this was a neat little action thriller for me. Up next is the Scott Derrickson horror thriller, The Black Phone. This is a movie based on the trailer I was super pumped for. I had read the short story, but the short story doesn't really give much to go on with the book. I think it's only like 25, 30 pages. It's very condensed. It's mostly just the kid in the room by himself, and he's just thinking about the world outside. The phone rings. It's only one person we hear. We really only see the grabber for one specific spot. And you only get like a taste or hear where he like talks about like how he hopes his sister's okay, and his sister was having like dreams about the people that went missing. So Scott Derrickson and his team, who are the other writer, whoever it was, really did a good job at expanding this story and the scope to create, a full-fledged movie. I think it comes in at like an hour and 40 minutes, I think. Where it falters for me mostly is that it takes too long to get going. We have to watch too many kids get taken before he gets taken, our main character. That's a lot of pipe. We're laying a lot of pipe there, a lot of setup. Too much setup. And I also think that at sometimes a lot of the movie is a little boring for me. It's kind of repetitive, and having read the short story, you could kind of see where it's like it gets to its repetitive points because it only has so much beef to go on. And I don't know, like I guess they just didn't want to. I don't know if it was that they didn't want to add too much of their own stuff, or they were just beholden too much to try and contain it to that source material. But there's just a large portion of this movie where every time we're taking a call from one of the kids, and like you're getting a little bit more, but a lot of it's just like it just gets a little boring at times. I still think it was a really good movie. I think the young girl in it is freaking. She's the best part of the movie. She's absolutely great. Ethan Hawke is the grabber or strangler, whatever the hell they're calling him. He was just absolutely creepy as shit in the movie. He was really freaking good. Even the young kid was solid in it. I think they did a really good job with the aesthetic of the 70s. It's a very good atmospheric movie. I just wish the script was a little tighter. But this was a solid summer horror movie to get in there, to get in one of the bunches. I was hoping for a little bit more, but it's a decent, solid summer flick to go out and see. Starting off our top 5 is a movie that absolutely imploded on impact. It is a day I never thought I'd ever see, and that is Pixar's Lightyear. It is an absolute shame what has happened to this movie at the box office. It's crazy. It's one of those things that's just like, even Pixar, even this late in the game, no movie is a sure bet in theaters. Like any person, no matter how many movies you made, no matter how long you've been in the game crushing it, can create a stinker. But I wouldn't say that this movie is a stinker. Obviously, commercially, it's a stinker. It's not making a lot of money. It's barely grossed over $100 million. I think it was at like 160 right now, which is absolutely terrible for Disney and Pixar and all them. I'm actually even losing it at my theater already. We've only had it for like 3 weeks. Like that's crazy to be losing that already. Like that shows just how not well this movie is doing at theaters. But taking all that away and looking at just the movie, it's a solid movie. It's funny that this movie that was the return to theaters for Pixar is the most Disney Plus like movie that's come out. Like Turning Red and Soul would have been much better in theaters to like come back to, but they pick a movie that was like tailor-made to be on Disney Plus. It's a good movie. It's got fun moments. It's lighthearted. Chris Evans as Buzz Lightyear is great. I like the twist about with Zurg. I like that they try to do a really adult time travel story. Pixar is always great about giving you stuff like that. I think where this movie falters the most is the same thing with Jurassic World. There's just too much pipe. They're laying the first act takes way too long. It's so, before we get into the meat and potatoes of the movie, it takes entirely too long. You should never have a montage in your first act. That's just an absolute no. Like, do not do that. And this movie did it, which is a very wild montage. A lot of stuff, a lot of pipe to lay to get to the meat and potatoes of what we're doing in this movie. And I think that's the biggest disservice the movie does. It starts way too early when it should be starting later in the game. But other than that, I think it's a fun movie. I think it's a fine movie. Obviously, it's definitely towards the bottom of the rankings in the Pixar movies. But when you've been crushing it out of the park as much as Pixar has, every now and again, you're going to make one that's only going to be a single or a double. Like, it happens. And Pixar, it finally caught up with them, and it's a shame that this happened to be the first movie for Pixar back into the theaters to do it, because I feel like Disney's going to take the wrong lessons from this and start putting more Pixar movies on Disney Plus again. But they need to not do that and stick the course. Keep putting your Pixar movies out in theaters. The return will come. It just didn't happen this time. Coming in at number 4 might be the most what the fuck movie I've seen this year. It is Baz Luhrmann's Elvis. The reason this video also took so long to come out is because I had to see Elvis, and I didn't get a chance to see it in June because of all the crazy shit I had to do at the end of June with going away and everything. So I just got a chance to see this the other night. And dear God, what a fucking movie it is. It is something to behold. It's a movie that's never boring. I should say that right off the bat. It's never boring. This movie is a wild ride. The best thing that can be said about it is that Austin Butler is a fucking revelation as Elvis Presley. Like, that dude absolutely commits, and he does a phenomenal job. Like, he at the very least is going to be nominated for this movie, and it's quite possible he could win it, because he absolutely embodies that character. And then you got Tom Hanks doing whatever the hell he's doing. It's absolutely hilarious throughout the entire movie. He cracks me the fuck up throughout the entire his act, whatever choices he made in that movie. Whatever you could say is you can't say it was boring or that you're not going to remember it. Like, you're going to remember that fucking performance because it's just so outrageous, between the fat makeup and the accent that he's doing on it. It is just such a wild performance. The movie is solid on its own. Script-wise, it's another one. So many movies make this mistake these days. It's way too bloated. It's way too long. Clocks in at like 2 hours and 40 minutes. It just tries to do way too much. And that's something that I think a lot of movies these days need to figure out, is how to condense their movies and kill their darlings and get some shit out of there. Because this movie needed like at least a half hour cut out of it. And there were spots in there where you can get a half hour shaved off that movie. It's tough with biopics because obviously you're like, we're going to make a movie about Elvis. We got to make it about his entire life. And it's like, fuck, man, that's really hard to do. Like, you're trying to make a cohesive story that's going to expand over this entire man's like life. Like, that's tough. It's just too much. Unless you're doing like a mini series or something, that's too much to do in a movie. You need to condense it and pick your moments and just create it from there. So that was one of the cons for this movie. It's just way too long. It's also way too chaotic at times. This movie took me way too long to get settled into because there's just so many cuts and jumping around time periods in like the first 25 minutes. Like, it's insane for a movie that's 2 hours and 40 minutes. It still felt just way too fast. Like, they were just blowing right through shit, which is never something you want to see, especially with a movie that's 2 hours and 40 minutes. Like, you want your scenes to breathe. You want them to have some room to settle into. And the first 25 minutes of this movie is just fucking balls to the wall, just screaming through different timelines. It is just absolutely chaotic. It makes sense coming from Baz Luhrmann, like having seen some of his other movies with the just kind of like frenetic energy that man just puts into his movie. But it's very hit or miss, and for me, that was probably one of the lesser aspects of that movie that I cared for. But still, a super, really good movie with some really stellar performances that I'm sure is going to get some Academy love come next year. Taking the bronze is Joseph Kosinski's Spiderhead, movie that came out on Netflix, starring Chris Hemsworth and Miles Teller. Tells the story about Miles Teller, who was serving time for a crime, and he decided to join into this super secret organization where he gets experiments done on him that he believes are things that are going to be put into drugs that are going to like help civilization like back out in the world. It's a weird movie. It's got a good, I think, through line for story-wise. Like, I really like that idea that it's like you're trying to do like what little good you can left, and you're in this study where you're just going through these experiments for somebody, and you're just trying, to make the best of what your time is in prison. And then you get Chris Hemsworth, who's kind of like the warden of the place, who's like doing these studies and doing these tests on them. That he's giving them all these kind of psychoactive drugs that are getting all these different responses out of them, and he's kind of manipulating them into think that they're doing this for some greater good back out in the world and doing some good while they still can. And obviously there's some more nefarious means afoot, and that Chris Hemsworth's character is more than meets the eye when it comes to these studies. It's a neat little thriller. I don't know if I was just in like the mood that night for something, but this movie hit the marks for me. I thought acting-wise, it was really, really good. I think Chris Hemsworth does probably his best performance outside of like a Marvel thing. Usually outside of Marvel, I always think he's good, but he's always saddled in roles that have never really like struck a chord, I feel, with audiences. Like, you get movies like Black Hat or In the Heart of the Sea, movies that just really struggled commercially and stuff and never really gave him the ability to show the range that he can do, and I think he gets to do it in this movie. There's a scene where he has to play a bunch of different emotions in a very short period of time, and he pulls that scene off like really well. It's phenomenally well done, and it is a testament to how good of an actor he is. Miles Teller, great as always. He's always fucking good in whatever he's in. It's just a solid thriller. And in a day where like you're just looking for really solid movies these days and they're so few and far in between, like when you get one, I feel like it hits harder than you normally would think it would because they're just so few and far in between. You're just so happy to get a movie that's hitting the level you want for it that it ends up being higher. Like this movie probably, if I go back in like 5-10 years, might be lower than what I think right now, but for where we are right now in June in this year of the movies that we've gotten so far this year, this was something that just hit hard for me and lands here at the bronze medal. Taken Silver is a movie that if you had asked me 3 months ago and told me the plot of it, I would have been like, fuck right, yeah, that's gonna be like my number 2 favorite movie for June. But it is Adam Sandler's Hustle. We're fucking here, man. It bothers me so much that this dude can fucking act all this time, and the last like 10-15 years he's just been giving us just fucking nonsense like That's My Boy and Jack and Jill and Hubie Halloween. Like the dude could fucking act, and when he tries, the movies are really fucking good. Like Uncut Gems is one of the most anxiety-riddled movies like of the last like 5-10 years that I've seen. He does such a good fucking performance in that. And in this one too, this is such a solid and really good sports movie. And he is fucking so good as the scout that's just going around trying to find that 1 in a million talent that's going to help bring him and rejuvenate not only his love for the game, but help pull him to a point in life where he feels that like he's satisfied with all the time that he's put into this career. It's a great performance, and he does it so well. It's like, please do more of this, Adam. Like, do more of these, like, just good movies. You can still make your Happy Madison silly shit with your buddies, but like, let's make some more of these good movies, because this movie was really good. I don't watch sports. It's funny. I love sports movies. I don't give a shit about watching sports in real life. So I knew absolutely. I mean, like I know basketball. I know how basketball is played, and I know the fundamentals and stuff like that. But outside of like the real main people like LeBron, Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal, Barkley, and all that, and like people like that, I couldn't name you a fucking basketball player. So it's hilarious when they play the credits at the end and they go through every single person in the movie who was like an actual basketball player, and I just thought they were all actors. Like I didn't know the main guy that like he's training and wants to like be good and get him into the NBA was an actual basketball player. I was like, damn, that guy's like a pretty decent actor. Like I wonder where they found him. And they're like, oh, he's just an NBA player that happens to be a pretty decent actor. Like he'd be much better than fucking LeBron was in Space Jam. It's a testament. It's a testament to what a director can pull off. Because whoever directed that movie, ace job. Getting the performances that you got out of those basketball players, because there is not a bad one in there of the basketball players that actually have to put forth performances. It's a really good movie. It's just a really solid sports movie. And again, like I said with Spiderhead, like when you're just living that high of getting a movie that's just hitting for you, it just hits that much harder because we're in this day and age where you're just getting so much garbage that when you get a movie that's just like really solid, you're like, fuck man, like this is great. Like it's fucking awesome. And that's why Hustle takes the bronze, baby. But as I always say, there can only be one. And for the month of June, my favorite movie was the Apple TV movie, Cha-Cha Real Smooth. This was a movie that I didn't really hear much about before, like it was like right about to come out. And then right as it was about to come out, people were raving about it and talking about how good it was. And that it was like this year's Coda. So naturally it was like, I gotta watch this movie. So me and my fiance watched it, and damn, was that just a good movie. I really like existential movies that are just like moment in time movies where somebody just gets their eyes open to the world around them, and their life isn't so much going to change so much by the end, but they have that arc where they've learned a lesson about just like being like, and there's no real answer to it. Like there's no movie part in this where they just have like that revelation where they're like, oh, this is the answer, this is how we're going to do that, this is what it's going forward. Because it's like, no, it's an existential movie where it's like there is no right or wrong answer. There's just experiences of the human beings around us that have lived this and can only speak to their truth which kind of informs you and teaches you in that moment to go forward and learn your truth from that. I really like movies that are like that. They just speak to me. I'm really into just that kind of existentialism. So movies like that always are my jam. It helps that the movie is super funny at times. It's always enjoyable. It's never boring. And I really like the story where it's just this kid who's out of college who realizes that life isn't going to be some fast track to success, and he's got to figure out his next move. And he ends up just becoming like a hype man at bar mitzvahs, because like people love him so much. He's just such a good like hype man and like DJ and all that. So he just ends up doing that, and through that meets this woman who has a kid with Down syndrome, and he ends up befriending them, and through them learns a little bit more, not only about himself, but about life in the process. That's just good stuff right there. That's just good existentialism in our movies, and I always enjoy that. I always love those quirky comedy dramas that can infuse that little bit of learning about the world and about life and about ourselves. So Cha Cha Real Smooth takes the gold for us here in the month of June. It is a movie that I absolutely recommend you should go out and see. I always recommend even the crappiest movies, all the way down from Man from Toronto, all the way up to Cha Cha Real Smooth. I recommend you go out and watch all of these movies, whether you're just looking for something to watch at home on Netflix, Hulu, Apple TV, whatever, or going out to the theater. You got to go out and support the local theater. Go out and do it. Get a free Stubbs card every Tuesday at AMC, $6.50 movies all day. What's a better price than that? $6.50, you can go see everything they got. Get out there and go watch some movies, people. And that's my list for the month of June. We had some good movies up there. You got your middle of the road and you got your less than great. But there was nothing for the month of June that I absolutely outright hated. So that's that's progress right there. I mean, I don't think I'd ever really watch Man from Toronto again. I don't see myself watching Jurassic World Dominion ever again. Maybe like, obviously never say never, but like not anytime soon. But any of the top 5 decent movies right there, definitely go out and check those bad boys out. They're well worth the price of admission, or if you're watching at home, it's well worth the price of the streaming site that you could watch them on, or you just get your free trial for the month and watch it. But that will do it for all of us here at The Outpost. The July video is already up for what I'm most anticipated for, because we're just all out of whack here at The Outpost. But be sure to go check out that video if you want to see what I'm most looking forward to for the month of July. And then be sure to check back at the end of July where we do this again, where we will see just how July ranked up for me. But that is for the next video. We're doing the outro to this video. So until next time, you have been you, I have been me. These are the movies that we love so much. Get out there and watch some movies, people. And until next time, adventure on.